What if I told you that long before satellites and telescopes, ancient cultures were tracking the movements of the stars, the moon, and the sun with a precision that sometimes even rivals our own? They built calendars not just to mark the days, but to decode the universe itself. These weren't simple charts scratched onto stone or bark. They were living maps of the sky, tools for prophecy, ceremony, and survival, woven into the very fabric of their myths and daily lives. And for centuries, many of these calendars were forgotten by time, buried by sand, or silenced by the rise of new empires, until now, today, we're uncovering 22 of these extraordinary timekeeping systems, each one a key to understanding how our ancestors saw their place in the cosmos. From the high temples of the Maya to the icy shores of Scandinavia, from ceremonial stones that captured the solstice light to wooden staves carved with runes under the aurora borealis, these calendars didn't just track time. They told stories, they predicted eclipses, marked the return of life-giving floods, honored gods, and warned of celestial omens. They connected human life to the grand, turning machinery of the heavens in a way that feels almost magical to us today. This video is an invitation to step into that world, to journey across continents and millennia, exploring how diverse cultures from every corner of the globe looked up at the same night sky and saw not just stars, but meaning. You'll discover how the rising of a single star could signal the start of a festival, how the shadow of a stone could determine the fate of a harvest, and how the dance of planets shaped empires and spiritual beliefs. This isn't just about history or astronomy, it's about rediscovering a part of ourselves, that deep, timeless human urge to find order in the chaos, to seek connection with something greater, and to leave a mark on time itself. So settle in, let's begin this journey together and uncover the secrets of the 22 lost calendars that track the cosmos. Think about standing under a night sky untouched by city lights, where the stars aren't just points of light but a vast, living storybook. This was the reality for our ancestors. They didn't have the precise instruments we have today, yet they achieved something profound. They observed the heavens with such dedication and nuance that they could predict the changing of seasons, the flooding of rivers, and the appearance of celestial events with remarkable accuracy. Their tools were the horizon, the shifting length of a shadow, and the patient, generational recording of patterns. These calendars were born from necessity, to know when to plant crops, when to harvest, when to expect the rains, but they quickly evolved into something much greater. They became the very heart of culture, a sacred interface between the human world and the divine. In every corner of the ancient world, from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Central America, people looked up and saw order in the chaos. They didn't see a random scattering of stars. They saw constellations that told the stories of their gods and heroes. The movement of the sun wasn't just a cycle of light and dark. It was a daily drama of rebirth, a struggle between light and darkness that had to be supported through ritual. A lunar eclipse wasn't a simple astronomical event. It was a portent, a moment when the natural order was disrupted, often seen as a sign of a god's displeasure or a coming calamity. This is where science and spirituality were not separate fields but a single, unified pursuit to understand the cosmos and humanity's role within it. These calendars were, in essence, the first complex data storage systems. They encoded generations of observational knowledge into cycles and symbols. A priest in Mesopotamia tracking the phases of Venus was doing rigorous science. A druid in ancient Britain aligning stones to the solstice sunrise was engineering a permanent astronomical observatory. A Polynesian navigator using the rising of specific stars to chart a course across the open ocean was applying precise celestial mechanics. Their methods were different, but their goal was the same: to map time itself using the clockwork of the universe. This shared endeavor highlights a universal human trait: our innate desire to find patterns, to predict, and to find our place within a grand, cosmic narrative. The loss of these systems meant we misplaced chapters of that universal story, but their rediscovery is like finding a lost key to understanding not just them, but ourselves. Of all the ancient calendars whispering secrets across time, perhaps none has captured the modern imagination quite like the Mayan long count. You've almost certainly heard of it, most famously linked to that worldwide buzz about the world ending in 2012. But the true story is so much more fascinating and far less apocalyptic than the myths would have you believe. This wasn't a doomsday device. It was a masterpiece of cosmic observation, a vast chronological framework that allowed the Maya to place their history, their rituals, and their very existence within the grand, turning gears of the universe. The Maya saw time not as a straight line marching endlessly forward, but as a series of immense, repeating cycles. The long count was their way of tracking these great cycles with breathtaking precision. Imagine a cosmic odometer. It counted days called Kain, which rolled up into larger and larger units. 20 Kain made a winnel, 18 winnels made a ton, a year of 360 days. 20 tons made a katon, and 20 katons made a bakton, a period of roughly 394 years. A full cycle, the Maya believed, was 13 baktons, which totals about 5,125 years. The cycle that so many misinterpreted as ending in 2012 was simply one of these great cycles completing, making way for the next. For the Maya, this wasn't an end. It was a transformation, a rebirth, much like the turning of a new year. Their astronomical prowess is what truly stuns the modern mind. This calendar didn't just track days, it synchronized perfectly with cosmic events we still marvel at today. They calculated the solar year to an accuracy that was more precise than the calendar used in Europe at the time of their flourishing. They tracked the complex cycles of Venus with obsessive detail, knowing its appearances as the morning and evening star down to a fraction of a day. These movements weren't mere data points, they were divine messages. The retrograde motion of Venus was often associated with war and upheaval, and the Maya would time military campaigns and royal coronations to align with these celestial omens. A solar eclipse was a moment of profound significance, a temporary victory of darkness over light that required ritual intervention to ensure the sun's return. Rediscovering this system was a triumph of 20th century archaeology and linguistics. For centuries, the long count dates inscribed on stelae and temple walls were silent mysteries. It was only through the painstaking work of deciphering Mayan glyphs and correlating the dates with known astronomical events that scholars could unlock its secrets. They cross-referenced these inscriptions with historical records and the remaining calendrical knowledge preserved by descendant communities, slowly piecing together the intricate mechanism of the long count. This process revealed a civilization with a sophisticated mathematical understanding, including the concept of zero, which they used to perform the complex calculations needed for their long-range prophecies and celestial predictions. At its heart, the long count was a sacred instrument. It was the rhythm section to the symphony of Mayan life, dictating the timing of everything from planting crops to conducting the most vital religious ceremonies. Priests used it to determine auspicious days for everything from birth ceremonies to royal burials, ensuring that human activity was always in harmony with the powerful, unseen forces governing the cosmos. This calendar was a bridge between the earthly and the divine, a way for the Maya to navigate their world with the confidence that they were moving in time with the universe itself. It stands as a powerful testament to their belief that time itself was alive, cyclical, and deeply holy. While the Mayan long count tracked vast cycles of time, the Aztecs, their neighbors and successors in Mesoamerica, created a monumental testament to their cosmology that was meant to be seen, touched, and felt: the colossal Sun Stone. Unearthed in 1790 during repairs to Mexico City's Central Plaza, the Zocalo, this 12-foot wide, 24-ton basalt disc, is more than a calendar. It's an intricate map of the Aztec universe, a story of creation etched in stone, and a terrifying promise of what was required to keep that universe running. It wasn't meant to be hung on a wall or carried by a priest. It was a focal point of the empire, likely set horizontally and used as a platform for the very rituals it demanded. At the heart of this complex symbol, you find the face of Tenatia, the fearsome and life-giving sun god. His tongue is a sharp, sacrificial flint knife, a brutal and immediate declaration of the price of his daily journey across the sky. He is depicted not in a moment of serene power, but in a state of hungry demand. The Aztecs believed the sun required constant nourishment, the precious chalchihuat, or precious water, a sacred term for human blood. Without this sustenance offered through ritual sacrifice, the sun would simply stop its movement, plunging the world into eternal darkness. The calendar, therefore, was not a passive tracker of time. It was an active, desperate mechanism for sustaining cosmic order. Surrounding Tenatia are 4 square panels, each representing a previous era of creation, or suns, that ended in catastrophic destruction. There was the Sun of Jaguars, where giant beings were devoured by big cats. The Sun of Wind, destroyed by hurricanes. The Sun of Fiery Rain, ended by volcanic eruptions. And the Sun of Water, obliterated by a global flood. We currently live in the 5th sun, the Sun of Movement, which began when the gods sacrificed themselves to create a new sun at the mythical city of Teotihuacan. This era, the Aztecs believed, would ultimately be destroyed by earthquakes. This cyclical view of time, of creation, destruction, and rebirth was fundamental to their worldview, and the Sun Stone is a permanent stone warning of this fragile cosmic balance. The stone's concentric rings are a masterclass in encoding astronomical knowledge. The inner ring contains the 20-day signs of the Aztec sacred calendar, the Tonalpohualli, which worked in tandem with the solar calendar. The next major ring is filled with intricate patterns representing the rays of the sun, and between them you can find symbols for turquoise and jade, embodying the preciousness of the heavens and the fertility of the earth. Finally, 2 massive fire serpents, Zucotl, encircle the entire disk, their heads meeting at the bottom. These serpents represent time itself, consuming its own tail in an endless cycle, and their bodies are segmented, symbolizing the years that have passed. Its rediscovery 2 centuries after the Spanish conquest was a moment of profound irony. Workers digging under the orders of the Catholic Spanish viceroy, in the heart of what was once the sacred precinct of the Aztec capital Tenochtitlan, struck stone. They unearthed the very embodiment of the pagan belief system the conquistadors had tried so hard to erase. For a time, it was displayed on the wall of the city's cathedral as a trophy of a defeated culture, its meaning completely misunderstood. It wasn't until much later that scholars began to decode its complex symbolism, realizing it was not an idol to be worshipped, but a sophisticated philosophical and astronomical text. It offers us a breathtaking and at times unsettling window into a world view where the sun's rise was not guaranteed, but earned daily through a pact between humanity and the divine. Leaving the vibrant, blood-soaked mythology of the Aztec Sun Stone behind, We now travel across the Atlantic to the banks of the Nile, where a different kind of cosmic precision was born from the rhythm of a river. The ancient Egyptian civil calendar stands as a testament to pure, elegant practicality, a system so effective that its basic structure still echoes in the calendar hanging on your wall today. While the Maya and Aztecs tracked vast cycles and portents, the Egyptians mastered the solar year itself, creating a tool for survival that was seamlessly woven into the fabric of their civilization and their view of the universe. The genius of their system was in its beautiful simplicity. They divided the year into 3 seasons of 4 months each, but these seasons weren't based on winter, spring, summer, and fall as we know them. They were defined by the Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt, Akhit, the season of inundation when the river flooded and deposited its rich, black silt onto the fields, Peret, the season of emergence when the waters receded and farmers could plant their seeds in the freshly fertilized soil, and Shemu, the season of heat, the time of harvest before the relentless sun baked the land and the cycle began anew. Each month was 30 days long, resulting in a 360-day year. But the Egyptians were sharp observers. They knew the solar year was roughly 5¼ days longer. So they added 5 extra days at the end of the year, a time known as the epagomenal days. These were considered to be the birthdays of the gods, Osiris, Horus, Set, Isis, and Nephthys, a period outside of normal time, filled with both celebration and a sense of danger as the ordered world was briefly suspended. This entire crucial cycle was set in motion not just by the river, but by a single, brilliant star. The Egyptians noticed that the heliacal rising of Sirius, the first day it becomes visible just before sunrise after a period of being hidden by the sun's glare, coincided almost perfectly with the beginning of the Nile's annual flood. This event, which occurred around mid-July, was their New Year's Day. They named the star Soptit, which the Greeks would later call Sothis, and we know as Sirius, the dog star. They deified it as the goddess Soptit, who was closely associated with Isis. The floodwaters were seen as the tears of Isis, mourning her slain husband Osiris, and their return was a sign of his resurrection and the renewal of the land. In this one observation, astronomy, agriculture, and mythology became one. The calendar was a divine promise, a celestial signal that the life-giving waters were on their way. Rediscovering the details of this calendar was like piecing together an ancient scientific manuscript. It wasn't found on one grand monument, but patiently reconstructed by scholars from countless temple inscriptions, administrative papyri, and later Greek and Roman accounts. These fragments revealed a society that ran on this solar clock. Tax collectors knew when to make their rounds based on the season. Priests scheduled festivals for the gods. Farmers lived their entire lives by its reliable, predictable pattern. It provided a stability that was the very foundation of Egyptian prosperity and bureaucratic order for thousands of years. And its influence did not end with the fall of the pharaohs. When Julius Caesar wanted to reform the messy Roman calendar, he called upon the Alexandrian astronomer Sexagenes. Sexagenes, deeply familiar with the Egyptian solar model, essentially recommended its adoption, though he fine-tuned it by introducing the leap year to account for that extra quarter day more accurately. This became the Julian calendar, and when Pope Gregory XIII made his own adjustments centuries later to correct a tiny drift, the result was the Gregorian calendar, the one most of the world uses today. So, in a very real sense, every time you write down a date, you are using a direct descendant of the ancient Egyptian effort to predict the flooding of the Nile, a system born from watching a star rise in the dawn sky. It is one of humanity's most enduring inventions, a legacy written not in stone but in time itself. high in the Andes where the air is thin and the sky feels close enough to touch, the Incas engineered a breathtaking dialogue with the sun. Unlike the Egyptians who tracked a star or the Maya who calculated long cycles, the Incas built their calendar into the very bones of the mountains. The centerpiece of this celestial architecture was the Intihuitana, a word that translates not just as hitching post of the sun, but carries the profound, desperate hope of the place to which the sun is tied. This wasn't a passive sundial. It was a vital, ritual instrument designed to perform the most crucial task imaginable, to prevent the sun from abandoning the earth forever. During the winter solstice in June, the sun, which the Incas worshipped as the god Inti, reaches its lowest and weakest point in the southern hemisphere sky. For an agriculture-based civilization living at extreme altitude, this was a time of genuine terror. The weakening sun meant shorter days, colder temperatures, and the very real threat of failed crops and starvation. The Incas believed that if the sun continued its southward journey and was not somehow tethered, it would vanish completely, leaving the world in perpetual darkness and cold. The Intihuatana was their anchor. This exquisitely carved granite pillar, rising from a precisely shaped stone base, was designed to catch the sun's rays at this critical moment. At noon on the winter solstice, the pillar would cast no shadow at all, a phenomenon that signified the sun had been successfully caught and was now being held fast, ready to be pulled back toward its full strength for another year. The precision of this engineering is astounding. Each Intihuatana was custom cut for its specific location, its angles and facets calibrated to the exact latitude of the site. The most famous example, rediscovered by Hiram Bingham at Machu Picchu in 1911, is a masterpiece of stonework. Its four corners are aligned with the four cardinal directions, and the angles of its central pillar correspond to the arc of the sun's seasonal travel. Inca priests, known as amotas, would use the shifting lengths and directions of the shadows cast by the pillar not only to mark the solstices and equinoxes with pinpoint accuracy, but to divide the year into optimal periods for planting, harvesting, and holding festivals. It was an agricultural almanac written in stone and sunlight. The ceremony surrounding the Intihuatana was the height of the Inca religious calendar. The ruler, the Sapa Inca, believed to be a direct descendant of Inti, would lead the rituals. Offerings of llama sacrifices, chicha corn beer, and finely woven cloth were made to the sun. There was no room for error. The fate of the empire literally depended on the priests correctly reading the celestial signs and performing the rituals to ensure the sun's return. This intertwining of astronomy, state power, and religion was absolute. The calendar dictated the rhythm of life, from when a farmer in a distant terrace should plant his potatoes to when the army could march, all sanctioned by the perceived will of the sun god. The rediscovery of these structures gave the modern world a new appreciation for Inca sophistication. For centuries after the Spanish conquest, the Intihuatana's purpose was forgotten, its true name lost. Many were destroyed by conquistadors who saw them as pagan idols. The one at Machu Picchu survived only because the site itself was abandoned and swallowed by the jungle, hidden from the destroyers. When scholars finally understood its function, it changed our perception of the Incas from being mere empire builders to being master astronomers who sculpted their landscape into a grand observatory. They didn't just observe the cosmos, they engaged with it physically and spiritually, building stone anchors to hold their god in place and secure the continuation of all life. From the stone pillars of the Andes, we journey now to the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where the Babylonians gazed at the night sky and saw a celestial court of gods whose movements dictated the fate of kings and empires. Theirs was not a calendar carved in stone for the sun alone, but a dynamic, living system etched into soft clay, meticulously tracking the ever-changing moon. The Babylonian lunar calendar was the heartbeat of Mesopotamian civilization, a sophisticated lunisolar mechanism that blended precise astronomical observation with a deep-seated belief that the heavens were a divine text, filled with omens waiting to be read by skilled scribes and priests. The rhythm of their timekeeping was set by the moon. Each month began not with a calculation, but with a moment of high drama and careful watching. On the evening when the first thin sliver of the waxing crescent moon became visible just after sunset, scouts would be stationed on the ziggurats, the great temple towers that served as bridges between earth and heaven. The moment the crescent was officially sighted and verified, messengers were dispatched across the kingdom to declare the start of a new month. This system, while beautifully human and observational, presented a fundamental challenge. A lunar month is approximately 29.5 days long, resulting in a year of only 354 days, 11 days shorter than the solar year that governs the seasons. Left unchecked, the months would slowly drift through the seasons, causing chaos for agriculture and religious festivals. The Babylonian solution to this drift was a stroke of bureaucratic and astronomical genius, the intercalary month. When the priests, who were the empire's chief astronomers, noticed that the lunar months were falling too far out of step with the solar cycle and the agricultural seasons, they would simply decree the insertion of an extra month. This wasn't a random act, it was governed by a complex 19-year cycle that they eventually perfected, ensuring that their lunar calendar remained in near-perfect harmony with the sun. This practice of intercalation, of deliberately adding time to the year, shows a remarkably advanced understanding of celestial mechanics and a pragmatic determination to keep human activity in sync with the cosmos. But the Babylonians were doing far more than just marking time for planting and harvest. They were pioneering the science of astronomy, and their calendar was their primary tool. They kept vast archives of observations on cuneiform tablets, recording the movements of planets, the occurrences of eclipses, and the positions of stars over centuries. By analyzing these long-term records, they discovered the repeating cycles of celestial phenomena. They could predict lunar eclipses with impressive accuracy and track the complex motions of planets like Venus and Mars. To them, however, these were not merely scientific predictions, they were divine warnings. An eclipse was a terrifying omen, often believed to foretell the death of a king or the fall of a city. The appearance of a comet or the retrograde motion of a planet was a message from the gods that had to be interpreted by specialist priests. The letter 1, E6, Dups Hachek A Inuma Anu in Lil, who would then advise the king on how to avert disaster through specific rituals or acts of atonement. Every aspect of the calendar was infused with this divine connection. Each month was sacred to a particular god or goddess. The 7th month, for instance, was dedicated to the autumnal equinox and to Shamash, the god of the sun and justice. The rituals, festivals, and even the activities permissible on each day were dictated by this celestial schedule. The calendar was the framework that organized not just economic life, but the entire spiritual and political world of Babylon. Its influence stretched far beyond Mesopotamia. The Jewish calendar, with its lunar months and intercalary years, is a direct descendant of the Babylonian system, adopted during the Jewish exile in Babylon. The Islamic calendar, with its purely lunar year and months that still begin with the sighting of the crescent moon, also carries this ancient Mesopotamian legacy forward into the modern day. The rediscovery of thousands of these cuneiform tablets has given us a window into the mind of a culture that looked up at the night sky and saw a clock, a calendar, and a divine scripture all in one. laying the foundational stones for all Western astronomy to come. While the Babylonians were meticulously recording omens on clay tablets on the other side of the world, Chinese scholars were developing a timekeeping system of breathtaking elegance and philosophical depth, one that saw the universe not as a source of ominous warnings, but as a vast, interconnected organism moving in perfect, predictable harmony. This is the Sexagenary cycle, a 60-year wheel of time that is perhaps the most complex and enduring calendar ever created, weaving together astronomy, elemental theory, mythology, and statecraft into a single, unified system that sought to align human destiny with the very rhythm of the cosmos itself. The structure of this cycle is a masterpiece of symbolic mathematics. It is built from two sets of characters that interlock like gears in a cosmic clock. The first set are the 10 heavenly stems, which are associated with the 5 classical Chinese elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, each appearing in both a yang and a yin aspect. The second set are the 12 earthly branches, which correspond to the 12 months of the year, the 12 two-hour periods of the day, and most famously, the 12 animals of the Chinese zodiac: the rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, rooster, dog, and pig. By pairing one stem with one branch in a fixed sequence, they created 60 unique combinations. Once all 60 pairings are exhausted, the cycle begins again, providing a framework that was used not just for marking years, but for identifying days, months, and even moments in time with incredible specificity. The astronomical genius behind this system is its intimate link to the movements of the planets, most notably Jupiter. Ancient Chinese astronomers calculated that the massive planet Jupiter takes approximately 12 years to complete one orbit around the Sun. As it moves through the heavens, it appears to pass through 12 different sectors of the sky each year. These 12 sectors became the foundation for the 12 earthly branches. Therefore, the 60-year cycle represents 5 full orbits of Jupiter, a grand celestial period after which the patterns were believed to repeat. This wasn't just an abstract concept, it was a practical tool for prediction. By tracking Jupiter's position and correlating it with the Sexagenary cycle, court astronomers could forecast weather patterns, the likelihood of bumper harvests or droughts, and even the potential for social unrest or political stability. Comets, which they called broom stars, and eclipses were also meticulously recorded within this 60-year framework, allowing them to build a vast database of celestial events and their corresponding outcomes on Earth. This system was far more than an almanac for emperors. It was the very bedrock of Chinese cosmology and personal identity. Each year in the cycle is not just numbered, it is named and imbued with a specific character based on its stem and branch combination. This creates a year with a distinct elemental quality and animal spirit. For instance, the year 2024 is the year of the wood dragon, a combination that occurs only once every 60 years and is said to bring qualities of innovation, ambition, and growth. A person's destiny and personality were believed to be shaped by the specific energy of their birth year, and astrologers would use this information to determine compatibility in marriage, auspicious dates for business ventures, and even the most favorable directions to travel. This created a society deeply conscious of its place within these grand, repeating cycles of time. The rediscovery of how ancient this system truly is was a revelation. The earliest evidence comes from oracle bones dating back to the Shang dynasty over 3,000 years ago, where scribes used the stems and branches to record dates for divination rituals. These ancient artifacts, first deciphered in the 20th century, prove that this complex cyclical concept of time was already fully formed in China's Bronze Age. It shows a civilization that had already moved beyond simple lunar or solar tracking to develop a meta-calendar, a system designed to map the interactions between heaven and earth itself. The Sexagenary cycle is a stunning intellectual achievement, a calendar that sees time as a dynamic dance of complementary forces, offering a profound and poetic vision of a universe in which humanity has an active and harmonious role to play. Moving from the intricate cycles of the Chinese system, we find a different kind of genius in ancient Greece, one that sought to solve a fundamental problem of timekeeping with pure, elegant mathematics. The challenge was universal. How do you make the moon's phases, which define our months, line up neatly with the sun's journey, which defines our years? The lunar year is about 354 days long, while the solar year is roughly 365 and a quarter days. This 11-day gap might seem small, but over just a few years, it causes the seasons to drift completely through the lunar months, disconnecting religious festivals from their proper time of year. It was the Athenian astronomer Meton in the 5th century before the Common Era who proposed a brilliantly simple solution, a cycle that would bring the sun and the moon back into perfect harmony. He calculated that every 19 solar years, the phases of the moon will recur on the exact same calendar dates. This 19-year period, which we now call the Metonic cycle, became one of the most important astronomical discoveries of the ancient world, a golden key that unlocked the door to predicting celestial events with unprecedented accuracy. This was not a calendar in itself, but a foundational rule that could be applied to any calendar system struggling with the sun-moon disconnect. Meton and his colleague Euctemon made this discovery through meticulous, long-term observation, likely using a large public sundial or heliotrophon in Athens to track the sun's path and carefully noting the dates of each new moon. They realized that 235 lunar months is almost exactly equal to 19 solar years. To make the math work, 12 of those years would have 12 lunar months each, while the other 7 years would have an extra intercalary month added. This elegant arrangement meant that after this 19-year grand cycle, the pattern would reset and the frustrating drift would be completely corrected. It was a monumental achievement in mathematical astronomy, demonstrating a shift from seeing celestial patterns as mystical signs to understanding them as predictable phenomena governed by rational, calculable laws. The practical applications were immediate and profound. For the Greeks, this cycle was essential for regulating their complex calendar of religious festivals and Panhellenic games, most famously the Olympic Games, which were held every 4 years. The Metonic cycle allowed priests and officials to announce these events years in advance with confidence, knowing the festival would fall in the correct season. But its most spectacular use was in predicting eclipses. The cycle incorporates a smaller, more precise pattern known as the Saros cycle, which predicts that similar eclipses will recur every 18 years and 11 days. By combining these cycles, Greek astronomers could forecast these terrifying celestial events, transforming them from chaotic omens of divine displeasure into predictable, natural occurrences. This demystification of the heavens was a revolutionary step toward modern science. The legacy of Meton's work stretches far beyond the Agora of Athens. It was adopted and adapted by countless cultures that followed. The most prominent example is its use in the calculation of the date for Easter in the Christian tradition. The First Council of Nicaea in 325 sought to establish a universal method for determining Easter, decreeing it should fall on the first Sunday after the first full moon following the vernal equinox. The complex calculations needed to reconcile this lunar event with the solar year relied heavily on the principles of the Metonic cycle. Even more directly, it forms the entire basis for the Hebrew calendar's system of leap months. 7 times in every 19-year cycle, an entire extra month, Adar Roman II, is added to ensure that Passover always falls in the spring, keeping the lunar months in lockstep with the agricultural seasons as dictated by the solar year. The rediscovery of this cycle is a story of intellectual preservation. While Meton's original writings are lost, his work was documented by later Greek astronomers and historians like Ptolemy and Geminus, and these texts were carefully copied and studied by scholars in the Islamic world during the Middle Ages, who further refined its calculations. It was through these preserved classical texts that European astronomers during the Renaissance rediscovered this powerful tool. The Metonic cycle stands as a timeless testament to the human desire to find order in the cosmos. It represents a pivotal moment when astronomy began to rely less on myth and more on math, proving that with careful observation and calculation, we could not only understand the rhythms of the universe, but also weave them into the very fabric of our social and religious lives. After the mathematical precision of the Metonic cycle, we journey across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean to the Hawaiian Islands, where timekeeping was not a matter of cold calculation but a vibrant, living celebration of life itself. Here, the calendar was not a tool to predict eclipses or align planetary cycles. It was the heartbeat of a society, marking a sacred season of peace, play, and profound gratitude. The Makahiki calendar was a 4-month period that transformed everyday life, a lunar-based system that governed a complete suspension of normal activities to honor Lono, the god of agriculture, rainfall, and fertility. This was not merely a way to mark days, it was a societal reset, a ritualized embrace of the natural world's abundance, and a reaffirmation of the covenant between the people, their chiefs, and the divine. The entire Makahiki season was ignited by a single celestial event, the first observed rising of the Pleiades star cluster, known to the Hawaiians as Makale, just after sunset. This appearance in the eastern sky, typically around mid-October, signaled the start of the rainy season and the beginning of the new year. For the next 4 months, the fierce god of war, Ku, was set aside, and the gentle, life-giving god Lono was welcomed ashore. A symbolic image of Lono, often a crosspiece bearing white copper cloth and streamers, was carried in a clockwise procession around each island. This was a time of complete and total peace, a kapu that forbade all war and conflict. The entire societal focus shifted from conquest and struggle to collection, celebration, and renewal. The practical aspect of this calendar was deeply tied to survival. The Makahiki coincided with the time of plenty, when the main staple crops like taro and sweet potato had been harvested. The procession of Lono served as a method for the alii, the chiefs, to collect the annual tribute or taxes from each district. But this was not a grim extraction of wealth. It was a joyous offering, a shared contribution to the community's well-being, and a thanksgiving for the bounty provided by Lono's rains. The collected resources, food, cloth, and crafted goods were used to support the priests, the chiefs, and to be redistributed in times of need, ensuring the stability of the entire society through the leaner months. But the heart of Makahiki was its celebration. This was a 4-month-long festival featuring intense athletic competitions, hula, feasting, and gambling. Games like ulu make a lawn bowling with stone discs, moa paha dart sliding, and boxing were not just for entertainment. They were religious rites that tested a community's strength, skill, and favor with the gods. These games were a way to channel competitive energy that was otherwise forbidden during the peace, and victorious athletes brought great honor to their families and districts. The entire period was a masterful piece of social engineering, releasing pressure, reinforcing community bonds, and celebrating the physical prowess that would be needed when the season of war returned. The rediscovery of this intricate system is a story of cultural resilience. With the arrival of European explorers and the subsequent changes to Hawaiian society, the practice of makahiki faded. Its details were preserved not in stone inscriptions or written codes, but in the chants, stories, and oral histories passed down through generations of Hawaiian elders, or kupuna. Early accounts from British explorers like Captain James Cook, whose arrival during makahiki season in 1778 may have initially led some Hawaiians to associate his ship with Lono's return, also provide crucial, though complex, historical snapshots. In recent decades, there has been a powerful revival of the makahiki tradition across Hawaii, a reclamation of this ancient calendar that reconnects the people to their land, their language, and their celestial guide. It stands as a beautiful testament to a culture that saw time not as a line to be marched along, but as a circle to be celebrated, a sacred season where the rhythms of the stars, the soil, and the human spirit were woven into a single, harmonious whole. Now we travel to the world of ancient India, where time itself was seen as a divine tapestry woven from the rhythmic dance of the moon through the starry heavens. The Vedic Nakshatra calendar is a system of breathtaking sophistication and spiritual depth, mapping the sky not into the 12 familiar signs of the zodiac, but into 27 or sometimes 28 distinct lunar mansions. Each of these mansions, or nakshatras, is a specific cluster of stars that the moon passes through during its monthly journey around the Earth. This wasn't just a way to mark the days, it was a sacred map that connected every moment of human life to a specific celestial energy, a divine personality, and a chapter in an eternal cosmic story. The entire system is built upon a foundation of meticulous observation. Vedic astronomers divided the 360-degree ecliptic, the sun's apparent path across the sky, into 27 equal segments of 13 degrees and 20 minutes each. Each segment was the domain of a primary star or asterism, creating a belt of 27 celestial way stations. The moon, in its orbit, spends approximately 1 day in each nakshatra, completing its cycle through all 27 in about 27.3 days. This created a lunar-based month that was far more nuanced than a simple count of days. Each day was defined by the unique qualities of the nakshatra the moon was passing through, believed to exert a profound influence on the nature of that time. The 28th nakshatra, Abhijit, was sometimes included as a corrective measure to account for the slight discrepancy between this ideal 27-day cycle and the moon's actual synodic period, showing the Vedic scholars' commitment to precision. But this calendar was so much more than an astronomical tool. It was a living encyclopedia of mythology and spirituality. Every single nakshatra was personified, linked to a specific Vedic deity, and imbued with its own symbolic meaning, power, and mythology. For instance, the nakshatra Rohini, associated with the star Aldebaran, is ruled by Prajapati, the creator god, and is considered the most fertile and nurturing of the mansions, ideal for beginnings and creative pursuits. In stark contrast, Mula, rooted in the Scorpius constellation and ruled by Nariti, the goddess of destruction, is seen as a time for tearing down the old to make way for the new, a period better suited for ending negative habits than for starting new ventures. This complex symbolic system provided a divine script for daily life, offering guidance on the most auspicious times for every conceivable action, from planting a crop and launching a business to conducting a wedding ceremony or even cutting one's hair. The practical applications of this knowledge were woven into the very fabric of Vedic society. Priests, or Jyotishis, were the master timekeepers, using their understanding of the nakshatras to create Panchanga's detailed daily almanacs that outlined the favorable and unfavorable periods for activity. A king would not go to war, a merchant would not begin a journey, and a couple would not marry without first consulting the panchang to ensure the moon was in a nakshatra conducive to success and harmony. This system also allowed for the prediction of celestial events. By understanding the fixed positions of the nakshatras, they could anticipate meteor showers, which were often seen as divine omens, and track the movements of planets against this fixed stellar backdrop, interpreting their journeys through the various mansions as stories of divine interaction playing out in the heavens above. The rediscovery of this intricate system is a testament to the power of an unbroken oral and written tradition. While the knowledge was nearly lost during periods of foreign rule and cultural suppression, it was preserved in the most sacred of Sanskrit texts, the Vedas themselves, and more specifically in the auxiliary texts known as the Vedangas, particularly the Jyotisha Vedanga. This text, dating back to at least the 5th or 6th century before the Common Era, is entirely dedicated to the astronomy and astrology needed to maintain the sacred calendar for ritual purposes. Modern scholars, by translating and studying these ancient texts, have been able to reconstruct this complex celestial science, revealing a worldview where the macrocosm of the universe and the microcosm of human life are inseparably linked, with the moon acting as the swift messenger that connects the two. From the sacred lunar mansions of Vedic India, we now venture into the harsh and beautiful world of the Norse, where time was not written on papyrus or etched in stone, but carved with deep meaning into wood. The Norse Runic calendar, known as a primstav or prime staff, was a deceptively simple tool born from a culture of seafarers, farmers, and poets. This wasn't a grand monument for priests alone. It was a practical, personal almanac that could be carried by any free person, a wooden stick inscribed with a series of cryptic runes that held the key to navigating the entire year both across the farmlands and the treacherous North Atlantic seas. Imagine a flat piece of wood, perhaps the length of your forearm, with two sides. One side, carved with notches and symbols, tracked the summer half of the year, while the other side detailed the winter half. This fundamental division reflected the Norse worldview, a constant balance between the fertile, life-giving season and the dark, dormant season of cold and scarcity. Instead of numbered days, the calendar used the runic alphabet, the Futhark. Each rune, far more than just a letter, was a symbol packed with its own name, meaning, and mystical power. Specific runes were carved to mark the key turning points of the solar year, the summer and winter solstices, and the spring and autumn equinoxes. But the true genius of the primstav was in its detailed marking of the quarter days, the dates that fell exactly between these solar events. These were crucial for scheduling the vital community gatherings called things, where legal disputes were settled and laws were made, ensuring everyone across the vast distances of Scandinavia could travel and assemble at the agreed-upon time. The mythology of the Norse gods was woven directly into this system of time. The runes themselves were not a human invention. According to the myth, the All-Father Odin won them through a terrible act of self-sacrifice, hanging himself from the world tree Yggdrasil for 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, in order to grasp this secret knowledge and bring it back to humanity. Because of this, each rune carved into the primstav carried a whisper of Odin's ordeal and the power it bestowed. The rune most associated with the sun and summer warmth was Sowilo, which looks like a lightning bolt. Its presence on the calendar marked the sun's strengthening power. Conversely, the deep winter was a time associated with the chaotic, destructive forces of the frost giants, a period to be endured until the gods and the sun could reassert their control. The most important festival, Yule, marked the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. It was a time of immense feasting, drinking, and sacrifice, not in a spirit of mere celebration, but as a vital ritual to bolster the weakening sun and ensure its return. The primstav told you precisely when to begin these essential rites. On a purely practical level, the primstav was indispensable for survival. For a farmer in Norway, the runes indicated the optimal time to sow barley, when to move livestock to higher summer pastures, and the critical window for harvesting hay before the autumn rains set in. A mark on the winter side might indicate the traditional start of the cod fishing season, when the weather patterns shifted and the great shoals appeared. For a Viking navigator, the calendar was just as vital. While they famously used sunstones to locate the sun on overcast days, they also relied on their knowledge of the stars. The primstav helped them keep track of the lunar phases and the changing position of certain guidepost stars and constellations throughout the year, allowing them to estimate their latitude and plot their course across the open ocean to places like Iceland, Greenland, and even the coast of North America. This humble stick was in effect a compact database of generational knowledge about nature, weather, and the heavens. The rediscovery of these calendars provides a priceless window into Viking Age astronomy and daily life. Most original medieval primstavs have been lost to time as wood rots away. Our knowledge comes from a few remarkable survives, preserved in peat bogs or found in ancient church archives, where they continued to be used well into the Christian era, often with the old runic symbols simply crossed out and a saint's name carved beside them. Later, post-Reformation versions from the 16th and 17th centuries, which are more common, show a clear continuity from their pagan predecessors, proving the stubborn persistence of this practical timekeeping method. Studying them shows us that the Norse were not just raiders and traders. They were keen observers of the natural world who developed a sophisticated, portable, and deeply symbolic system to harmonize their lives with the relentless and majestic cycles of their northern cosmos. Now we journey to the heart of ancient Persia, where timekeeping was not merely an agricultural tool but a sacred battleground in the cosmic war between light and darkness. The Zoroastrian calendar embodies this profound spiritual struggle, a solar-based system that organized the year into a continuous act of devotion. With its 12 months of 30 days each, plus 5 additional days at year's end, its structure feels familiar, echoing the pragmatic design of the Egyptian civil calendar. But here, every single day and month was consecrated to a specific divine entity, a Yazata, transforming the passage of time into a daily invocation of divine virtues and a constant reinforcement of moral order against the forces of chaos. The rediscovery of this intricate system is a story of faithful preservation against overwhelming odds. The primary source is the Avesta, the ancient collection of Zoroastrian sacred texts. For centuries, these teachings were passed down orally by priests, a living chain of memory that preserved the calendar's structure and its deep connection to the cosmos. Later, they were committed to writing in the intricate script known as Avestan. This textual treasure trove, studied and deciphered by scholars, revealed a calendar that was the very engine of Zoroastrian life. Each of the 30 days in a month had its own name and guardian Yazata, such as Vo Humana, good purpose, or Ashavahish, to truth and justice. Each of the 12 months was also named for a Yazata, creating a layered system where, for example, the month dedicated to the deity Mithra, the god of covenant and the rising sun, would contain days also dedicated to other divine aspects. This meant every day was a complex interplay of spiritual energies, guiding the community in their prayers, actions, and reflections. The most magnificent and enduring legacy of this calendar is the celebration of Nowruz, the Persian New Year, which begins precisely at the moment of the vernal equinox. This is no arbitrary date. It is a direct celestial alignment that marks the triumphant return of light, warmth, and life after the bleakness of winter. It is the ultimate symbolic victory of Ahura Mazda, the wise lord of light, over the forces of darkness. The preparations for Nowruz are a weeks-long ritual of purification, a thorough cleaning of the home, settling debts and seeking forgiveness, all meant to spiritually prepare for the new year. The celebration itself involves setting a Haft-Sin table adorned with 7 symbolic items starting with the letter S in Persian, each representing a hope for the coming year, such as sprouts for rebirth, garlic for health, and apples for beauty. This festival, which has survived for over 3 millennia and is still joyously celebrated by millions across the Middle East and Central Asia today, is a living testament to the power of the Zoroastrian calendar to weave cosmic events into the very fabric of human culture. The philosophical depth of the calendar is what truly sets it apart. It is a physical manifestation of the core Zoroastrian dualistic belief in the ongoing struggle between Asha order, truth, and drudge deceit, chaos. The orderly, predictable progression of the sun through the months and the seasons was seen as a manifestation of Asha, a divine model of perfection that humanity was to emulate in their personal conduct and social organization. The 5 extra days at the end of the year, known as the Gatha or God days, were considered outside the normal order of time. They were a liminal period, a time for solemn reflection, prayers for the departed, and a conscious effort to ward off the spiritual darkness that sought to invade this structured reality. This calendar was therefore a map for living a righteous life, a constant reminder that human existence is an active participant in a vast cosmic drama where every day presents a choice to side with light or darkness. Buried in a field in eastern France for nearly 2,000 years, a fragmented bronze tablet lay waiting to rewrite our understanding of Celtic wisdom. When it was unearthed in 1897 near the town of Coligny, it wasn't immediately recognized as a revolutionary artifact. It was a puzzle, a shattered mosaic of Gaulish words and numerals etched into metal. But as scholars painstakingly reassembled the 150 surviving fragments, an astonishing picture emerged. This was the Coligny Calendar, the most significant and complete ancient Celtic timekeeping document ever discovered. A complex lunar solar system that reveals a society of deep astronomers and meticulous record keepers, far removed from the primitive barbarians often depicted by their Roman conquerors. The calendar's structure is a masterpiece of synchronization, designed to solve the eternal problem of marrying the moon's cycles with the sun's year. It spans 5 full years, each divided into 12 lunar months, but the Celts, like the Babylonians before them, understood the drift. Their ingenious solution was to insert an entire extra month, not once, but twice during this 5-year cycle. This intercalation kept their lunar months perfectly aligned with the solar seasons, ensuring that their festivals for planting and harvest always occurred at the correct time. Each month was further divided into 2 halves, a light half marked by the waxing moon and a dark half governed by the waning moon. This duality reflects a core Celtic belief in the balance of opposing forces, a rhythm seen in life, death, and the very heavens above. What brings this ancient system to life are the names of the months themselves, whispered to us in the ancient Gaulish language. They are not abstract numbers, but poetic reflections of the natural world and the agricultural year. Samanios likely means seed fall or summer's end, and it is believed to be the month that contained the festival of Samhain, a time when the veil between the worlds was thought to be at its thinnest, a concept that echoes into our modern Halloween. Germanios translates to winter's end, while Rivros may mean frost time, and Kutios is thought to be the time of winds. These names transform the calendar from a mere tracking device into a lyrical almanac, deeply embedded in the seasonal realities of Celtic life in Northern Europe. Beyond simply marking time, the calendar served as a crucial guide for ritual and daily life. Certain days are explicitly marked with the abbreviation Ath for Attis, meaning lucky or favorable, and Anum for Anmotu, meaning unlucky or inauspicious. This wasn't mere superstition. It was a sacred map for navigating a world filled with spiritual forces. The Druids, the Celtic priestly class who were famously secretive about their knowledge and left no written records of their own, were almost certainly the architects and keepers of this system. The Coligny Calendar is our strongest archaeological evidence of their sophisticated astronomical understanding. They needed to know precisely when to perform sacrifices to ensure a good harvest, when to convene tribal gatherings, and when to celebrate the turning of the great wheel of the year. This bronze tablet was likely their reference, a central tool for maintaining the cosmic and social order. Its rediscovery was a watershed moment, forcing a complete reassessment of Celtic culture. For centuries, our view of the Gauls was filtered through the biased accounts of Roman historians, who had every reason to portray them as uncivilized. The Coligny Calendar shattered that illusion. Here was tangible proof of a complex society with an advanced grasp of mathematics and astronomy, capable of creating a system that rivals the sophistication of any in the Mediterranean world. It shows a people who looked at the night sky, tracked the moon's subtle dance, and wove that knowledge into the very fabric of their identity, creating a rhythm of time that harmonized human activity with the eternal cycles of the cosmos. Isolated by sea yet deeply connected to the continent, ancient Japan embarked on a centuries-long project of cultural synthesis, and nowhere is this more elegantly expressed than in its adoption and adaptation of the Chinese lunisolar calendar. This was not a simple copy, but a profound act of translation, taking a complex system of cosmic observation and meticulously weaving it into the unique spiritual and agricultural fabric of the Japanese islands. For over a millennium, this imported framework governed everything from the emperor's court rituals to the rice farmer's planting schedule, creating a harmonious, if complex, rhythm of life that only ended with the seismic cultural shift of the Meiji Restoration in 1873. The core mechanics of the system were a direct import from Tang Dynasty China. It was a lunisolar calendar, meaning it primarily followed the 29.5-day cycle of the moon for its months, but it periodically inserted an entire extra, or intercalary, month to keep the lunar year in step with the 365-day solar year and the crucial turning of the seasons. This ensured that the all-important spring festival always occurred in the spring, and the autumn harvest moon always rose in the autumn. The year was further divided into 24 seki, or solar terms, each about 15 days long, which provided an even more precise solar-based framework for agricultural activity. These terms had beautifully poetic names like Rishon, beginning of spring, Same, clear and bright, and Dagon, greater cold, which acted as a lyrical almanac, perfectly describing the subtle shifts in the natural world. But the true genius of the Japanese system lies in how it layered indigenous Shinto beliefs over this Chinese skeleton. Each month and festival was imbued with kami, the sacred spirits that inhabit all things. Cosmic events were not just astronomical phenomena, they were direct messages from these spirits. A solar eclipse known as Hai Jeshoku, or sun-eating, was a moment of supreme danger and omen. It was believed that the sun was being consumed by a celestial demon, and the entire court would erupt into frantic activity. Musicians would play emergency music to scare the demon away, while officials would don special ceremonial dress and scrutinize the event to determine what imperial action or ritual apology might be required to restore cosmic order. The moon, too, was deeply sacred, with the full moon of the 8th month celebrated as Jugoya, a night for moon viewing parties and offerings to Tsukuyomi, the moon god. This spiritual calendrical fusion is perhaps most beautifully preserved in the festival of Obon. While the concept of honoring ancestral spirits has roots in the Chinese Ghost Festival, the Japanese observance is uniquely its own. It typically occurs in mid-August according to the old lunar calculation. This is not a time of fear, but a joyful and poignant homecoming. Families believe the spirits of their ancestors return to visit the living during this period. They clean their graves, prepare special offerings of food, and light lanterns to guide the spirits home. The culmination is often a community bon odori dance, a circular, gentle dance that welcomes the spirits and celebrates the connection between the living and the dead. Obon shows how a calendrical date was transformed into a powerful cultural touchstone, weaving astronomy, ancestor worship, and community into a single, enduring tradition. The rediscovery of how this calendar functioned is a story of delving into a wealth of historical records, from the formal chronicles of the imperial court, like the Nihon Shoki, to the detailed diaries of nobles like the Pillow Book of Shonagon. These texts are filled with references to calendar adjustments, the scheduling of rituals, and the interpretation of omens. Furthermore, artifacts like ancient chronologies and printed almanacs, often possessed by wealthy families or temples, have provided physical evidence of the system's use. Studying these sources reveals a nation that was both a diligent student of Chinese science and a creative innovator, tailoring a grand import to fit the soul of its own islands, creating a unique temporal world where the moon's phase dictated the rhythm of both the palace and the paddies. Leaving behind the structured court rituals of Japan, we now travel to the high desert mesas of the American Southwest, where time is not dictated by imperial decree, but is instead breathed into existence through story, song, and the silent, patient observation of the horizon. The Hopi calendar is a living, breathing entity, a complex tapestry woven from the cycles of the sun, the moon, and the stars, all harmonized to sustain a profound covenant between the people, their crops, and the cosmos. Unlike a carved stone or a printed almanac, this calendar exists primarily in the collective memory of the Hopi people, passed down through generations of oral tradition and encoded in the ancient petroglyphs that dot their sacred landscape. It is a system not of rigid dates but of celestial events, a fluid and deeply spiritual guide to maintaining balance in a fragile world. At its heart are two complementary cycles that govern Hopi life, the Kachina season and the non-Kachina season. These are not merely divisions of the year, they are two distinct modes of existence, each with its own ceremonies, responsibilities, and relationship with the spiritual world. The Kachina season begins at the winter solstice, a time when the Katsanam, the powerful spirit messengers, are believed to leave their home in the San Francisco Peaks and dwell among the Hopi people for roughly the next 6 months. This period is one of intense ceremony where masked dancers embody these spirits, bringing prayers for rain, fertility, and community well-being down from the mountains. The season culminates with the Niman or home dance in July, a bittersweet ceremony where the Kachinas are sent back to their spiritual home, taking the prayers of the people with them and signaling a shift in the world's rhythm. Guiding the precise timing of these ceremonies is a sophisticated understanding of the sun's journey. The Hopi are master horizon-based astronomers. They established shrines and specific vantage points from which they could watch the sun's rising and setting points shift along the horizon throughout the year. The winter and summer solstices are critical anchor points, but so are the equinoxes and the midpoints between them. For instance, the position of the sunrise in February would signal the time to begin preparing the fields and to conduct the Pawamu or bean dance ceremony, a ritual of germination and purification that helps to ensure the success of the coming crops. This precise solar observation provided the unchanging, reliable skeleton upon which the more fluid lunar and stellar cycles could be layered. The moon plays a vital role in fine-tuning this calendar. The Hopi track the lunar months to schedule the specific nights for certain Katsina dances and other rituals within the broader solar season. But the true navigational beacons of the Hopi year are the stars. The pre-dawn rising of certain key constellations and stars act as a celestial alarm clock, announcing the arrival of critical moments. The most important of these is the heliacal rising of the Pleiades star cluster. Its appearance in the eastern sky just before dawn signals the beginning of the new year for many Hopi and is a primary marker for the complex Wuwuchim ceremony, a deeply sacred ritual of renewal and initiation that marks the end of one annual cycle and the beginning of the next. Other stars serve as guides for planting specific crops like corn, beans, and squash, each according to its own celestial timetable. The rediscovery of this intricate knowledge by the outside world is a delicate story of ethnographic study and Hopi cultural resilience. Early anthropologists like Jesse Walter Fuchs began documenting Hopi ceremonies in the late 19th century, but they often misunderstood the deep astronomical connections. It was through the patient work of later researchers, often working in partnership with Hopi elders, that the true sophistication of the calendar emerged. They learned that it is more than an agricultural or ceremonial guide. It is the foundational principle of Hopivatsquani, the Hopi way of life. It encapsulates a philosophy of reciprocal responsibility. The ceremonies performed at the correct celestial moment are not requests. They are essential acts of participation that help to maintain the balance of nature. By singing the right songs as the Pleiades rise, or dancing the right dances as the sun reaches its solstice point, the Hopi people fulfill their duty to ensure the sun will turn back, the rains will come, and the world will continue its cycle. This calendar is a profound declaration that human actions and the cosmos are inextricably linked in a dance of mutual care. Deep in the rugged Bandiagara escarpment of Mali, the Dogon people have maintained a cultural and astronomical tradition that stands as one of the most compelling and debated mysteries in the history of science. Their lunar calendar is far more than a simple tracker of days. It is the pulsating heart of a complex cosmology, a system that seamlessly weaves the practical rhythms of agriculture with profound spiritual rituals, all under the watchful eye of celestial bodies both visible and unseen. For the Dogon, the moon is not a distant rock but a dynamic force, its phases dictating the optimal moments to sow millet and sorghum, to conduct marriages, and to honor the ancestors through elaborate masked ceremonies known as the Dharma. This intricate dance with the lunar cycle has ensured their survival and cultural continuity in a harsh environment for centuries, a testament to a deep, generational observation of the night sky. What catapulted the Dogon calendar from a subject of anthropological interest into a worldwide controversy is its astonishing connection to a star system far beyond the reach of the naked eye, Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky. According to their oral traditions carefully passed down through generations of priests, the Sirius system is not a single star but a ternary system. They speak of Sigi Tolo Sirius A, Po Tolo the Digitaria star, now known as Sirius B, and Emya Tolo the sorghum female star, a potential third body. The knowledge of Sirius B is what sends shivers down the spine of astronomers. Sirius B is a white dwarf, an incredibly dense and faint stellar remnant that is completely invisible without a powerful telescope. Yet the Dogon knew of its existence. They described its 50-year elliptical orbit around Sirius A, its small size, and its immense density, saying it was made of a metal heavier than iron. a description that perfectly matches the properties of a white dwarf's degenerate matter. This knowledge is intricately tied to their calendar, with the 50-year orbit of Sirius B marking the cycle for the Grand Sigui ceremony, the most important and secretive ritual in Dogon society, held to regenerate the world and commemorate the revelation of speech to humanity. The central figure in the modern rediscovery of this system was the French anthropologists Marcel Griaule and Germain Dieterlen, who spent decades living with the Dogon people in the 1940s and 50s. They were initiated into deeper levels of knowledge and in 1951 published their seminal work, which detailed the Dogon's sophisticated understanding of the Sirius system. The publication sent shockwaves through the scientific community, immediately igniting a fierce debate that continues to this day. How could a people with no apparent astronomical instruments possess such precise knowledge about an invisible star? One school of thought, often labeled the ancient astronaut theory, posits that this knowledge is so advanced it must have been imparted by extraterrestrial visitors in the distant past, a notion popularized by authors like Erich von Däniken. Others suggest a more terrestrial, though no less fascinating, explanation: cultural contamination. Critics point out that Sirius B was first observed telescopically in 1862 and had been widely discussed in Western astronomical circles by the early 20th century. It is possible, they argue, that this information was relayed to the Dogon by European visitors, missionaries, or soldiers before Griaule's arrival, and was then incorporated into their existing mythological framework. Proponents of the Dogon's independent discovery counter that their descriptions are too precise and too deeply embedded in their culture and calendar to be a recent adoption, suggesting the knowledge could represent the remnant of a much older, lost African astronomical tradition. Regardless of its origin, the Dogon Lunar Calendar and its connection to Sirius offers a powerful challenge to traditional narratives about the history of science. It forces us to reconsider what constitutes advanced knowledge and to acknowledge that profound astronomical insight can be developed and preserved outside the frameworks of Western academia, encoded not in equations but in myth, ritual, and oral tradition. The calendar is a living bridge between earth and sky, a system where the planting of a seed is timed to the moon's phase, and the most sacred ceremony is timed to the orbit of a star no one can see, reminding us that the human drive to understand the cosmos manifests in beautifully diverse and profound ways. Long before the clean, solar logic of the Julian calendar ordered the Roman world, time itself was a far more chaotic and politicized affair, governed by the messy, moon-driven mechanism of the Roman Republican calendar. This early system was a fascinating and often frustrating blend of priestly authority, political maneuvering, and genuine astronomical observation, a lunar-solar hybrid that managed to be both deeply sacred and profoundly dysfunctional. Its eventual overhaul by Julius Caesar wasn't just a bureaucratic reform. It was a revolutionary act that ripped the measurement of time from the hands of the elite and gave it over to the unchangeable motion of the sun, forever altering Rome's relationship with the cosmos. The basic framework of the Republican calendar was deceptively simple. It consisted of 12 months totaling 355 days, a number that roughly approximates 12 lunar cycles but falls critically short of the 365.25-day solar year. This 11-day gap created a problem everyone could feel. The seasons would slowly but surely drift through the calendar. A month named for the spring, like Aprilis, would eventually find itself in the heat of summer. To correct this drift, the system relied on the insertion of an intercalary month called Mercedonius, a 27 or 22-day period that was supposed to be added every 2 years. The responsibility for declaring this insertion fell not to astronomers, but to the Pontifex Maximus, the high priest of Rome, and a committee of priests known as the pontifices. This is where the system descended from science into farce. The addition of Mercedonius was not based on a fixed astronomical rule, but was left to the discretion of these politically appointed officials. This power became a potent political weapon. A pontifex friendly to the current consuls could shorten a magistrate's term in office by neglecting to add the extra month, or extend the term of a favored official by inserting it. The calendar could be manipulated to delay or hasten elections, to extend the power of allies, or to cut short the authority of enemies. Time itself became a currency of corruption. By the time of Julius Caesar, this manipulation had become so rampant that the civic calendar was a staggering 3 months out of sync with the actual seasons. Winter festivals were being celebrated in the autumn, and the timing of vital agricultural events and religious ceremonies was completely divorced from the natural world they were meant to honor. Yet beneath this political chaos lay a calendar deeply rooted in Rome's rustic origins and spiritual life. The months themselves tell this story. Some, like January Januarius, are named for gods, in this case Janus, the two-faced god of beginnings and endings. Others are purely descriptive. September, October, November, and December are simply the Latin words for 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, reflecting their original position in a year that began in March. The month of Aprilis may derive from the Latin aperia, to open, for the opening of buds in spring. The original first month, Martius, was dedicated to Mars, not initially as a god of war, but as a guardian of agriculture and the spring growth. Each month was further divided by 3 key days: the Kalends, the first of the month, the Nuns around the 5th or 7th, and the Ides, the 13th or 15th, which were critical for public business and debt collection. The Ides of March, forever infamous as the date of Caesar's assassination, was simply the monthly midpoint, a day sacred to Jupiter. The rediscovery of how this convoluted system actually worked is a testament to historical detective work, pieced together from the writings of later Roman authors like Cicero, Plutarch, and most importantly, the scholar Macrobius, who in the 5th century Common Era wrote the Saturnalia, a work that delves into the history of the Roman calendar. These texts, studied and cross-referenced by Renaissance and modern historians, reveal a system that was both ingeniously adaptable and hopelessly flawed. They show us a Rome that was still finding its way, a society in transition from a small agricultural community that watched the moon and the seasons to a sprawling republic, and later an empire that required a stable, universal measure of time for administration, trade, and law. The chaotic Republican calendar, for all its faults, was a necessary stepping stone. It represented the Roman desire to impose order on time, even if their first attempt was corrupted by the very human politics it was meant to transcend, setting the stage for Caesar's dramatic and lasting intervention. While the Romans were struggling to align their political calendar with the seasons, on the vast, open plains of the Arabian Peninsula, a different kind of timekeeping was flourishing, one born from the practical needs of nomadic life and the sacred rhythms of tribal gathering. The pre-Islamic Arabian calendar was a sophisticated lunisolar system that served as the silent, steady heartbeat of a complex network of trade routes, agricultural settlements, and annual pilgrimages. Rediscovering its mechanics has been like listening to the echoes of a lost language, pieced together not from stone inscriptions, but from the rich tapestry of pre-Islamic poetry, rare historical accounts, and the linguistic clues embedded in the region's later traditions. This was a calendar that allowed the diverse tribes of Arabia to synchronize their lives across immense distances, creating a shared temporal map for survival and commerce in a harsh and demanding landscape. The system's genius and its ultimate complexity lay in its elegant solution to the same problem faced by the Babylonians and the Romans, the 11-day drift between the lunar and solar years. The Arabs, too, employed intercalation known as N-A-S-I-M-A-C-R-O-N-2-B. Approximately every 3 years, an entire extra month would be added to the calendar, but the method of deciding when to add it was uniquely Arabian. This responsibility fell to a specific individual, a kind of priest official who would make the declaration based on a combination of astronomical observation and seasonal necessity. The goal was to ensure that the annual pilgrimage fairs and the sacred months of truce always fell in their appropriate seasons, preventing the lunar months from cycling through the entire solar year and disrupting the delicate social and economic agreements that held tribal society together. This practice of N-A-S-I-M-A-C-R-O-N-2-B required a deep, generational understanding of the stars and their relationship to the changing desert environment. The celestial compass for this system was the majestic procession of stars across the clear desert night sky. The Arabs were masterful stellar observers, dividing the sky into 28 lunar mansions, much like the Vedic nakshatras, known as Manazil al-Qamar. The heliacal rising and setting of these specific star groups were the true markers of the year, far more reliable than the shifting lunar months alone. The pre-dawn appearance of the Pleiades, for instance, signaled the end of the intense summer heat and the beginning of the cooler, gentler autumn, a time known as al-Wazmi, when the gentle rains would arrive and allow for the planting of crops. The rising of Canopus indicated the coming of the coldest part of the year, while the setting of Scorpius marked the start of the scorching summer. This astral knowledge was not abstract. It was a practical survival guide, dictating when to move herds to new pastures, when to expect certain winds, and when it was safe to embark on long trading journeys across the desert. The most famous application of this calendar was the scheduling of the great cultural and commercial fairs, the most renowned of which was the Fair of Ukaz near modern-day Taif. This was not merely a market, it was the Olympics, the Cannes Film Festival, and the Supreme Court of the pre-Islamic Arab world all rolled into one. Its timing was determined celestially, likely aligned with the end of the sacred months when tribal warfare was forbidden, allowing for safe travel. Poets and orators from across the peninsula would gather to compete, reciting elaborate odes known as qasidas, their words so powerful that the best poems would be transcribed in gold and hung on the curtains of the Kaaba in Mecca, an honor known as al-Malakat, the suspended odes. Tribal disputes were settled, alliances were forged, and goods were traded from the Levant to Yemen. The Fair of Ukaz was the pinnacle of Arabian cultural life, and its very existence was made possible by a shared calendar that could accurately predict its occurrence year after year. This entire system, with its intercalation and deep connection to the solar seasons, was fundamentally appended with the dawn of Islam. The Quran explicitly forbade the practice of N-A-S-I-M-A-C-R-O-N-2-B, labeling it an increase in disbelief, Surah at-Tawbah 9:37, as it was seen as a human manipulation of the divine order of time. In its place, the purely lunar Islamic calendar was instituted, one that makes no attempt to synchronize with the solar year, and thus cycles through all the seasons every 33 years. This change was profound, shifting the focus from agricultural and seasonal time to a purely religious rhythm, with months like Ramadan migrating through the entire year. The rediscovery of the pre-Islamic system, therefore, is not just about astronomy. It's about recovering a lost worldview, a time when the rhythms of trade, poetry, and the stars themselves were intimately woven into the very identity of the Arabian people, creating a unified temporal fabric across the desert long before the call to prayer defined the hour. High in the thin air of the Himalayas, where the earth meets the sky, time itself is measured with a spiritual and mathematical complexity that mirrors the region's breathtaking landscape. The Tibetan calendar is a magnificent synthesis, a lunisolar system that masterfully blends the astrological profundity of Indian Buddhism with the precise solar terms of Chinese tradition. This isn't merely a tool for marking days, it's a living, breathing guide to harmonizing every human action, from planting a single barley seed to embarking on a profound spiritual retreat with the intricate dance of the cosmos. It represents a pinnacle of cultural exchange, showing how knowledge flowed along ancient trade routes, not just as goods but as ideas, which were then refined into something entirely unique and powerful. The mechanics of this calendar reveal its hybrid genius. Its foundation is the lunar month, following the waxing and waning of the moon, a rhythm deeply respected in Buddhist practice. But to keep these lunar months in sync with the solar year and the vital agricultural seasons, the Tibetans, like many cultures before them, employ a system of intercalary months. This is where the Chinese influence shines through, particularly in the use of the 24 solar terms, which divide the solar year into precise segments based on the sun's position. These terms, with names like awakening of insects and grain full, provide the essential solar skeleton that prevents the lunar months from drifting through the seasons. Meanwhile, the system's complex calculations for planetary movements and its rich astrological symbolism are a direct inheritance from Indian Vedic astronomy, filtered through the lens of Tibetan Buddhism. This creates a system where a single date can tell you the moon's phase, the sun's position, the influence of the planets, and the specific energetic quality of the day. This celestial knowledge is not abstract, it is the very pulse of daily life. For a Tibetan farmer, the calendar dictates the optimal time to plant and harvest crops, ensuring their survival in a short and demanding growing season. For a nomadic herder, it suggests the best times to move livestock to higher pastures, but its application runs far deeper than agriculture. The calendar is indispensable for determining the most auspicious dates for every significant life event. A family would consult it to choose a date for a wedding, the start of a long journey, or even a simple business transaction. Most importantly, it governs the timing of all religious observances. The dates for elaborate monastic debates, the creation of intricate sand mandalas, and the chanting of specific sutras are all determined by this cosmic clock, ensuring that human spirituality is perfectly aligned with the universe's rhythm. The most vibrant expression of this is Losar, the Tibetan New Year, a festival whose date is calculated with exquisite care. Unlike the fixed solar date of January 1st, Losar is a moving holiday, typically falling between late January and early March. Its precise timing is determined by a complex formula that incorporates the new moon nearest to the beginning of the Tibetan year, which itself is based on a 60-year cycle similar to the Chinese system, with each year named after an element and an animal. The festivities themselves are a direct reflection of the calendar's purpose, to purify the old and welcome the new. Homes are scrubbed clean, special foods like caps pastries are prepared, and monasteries hold elaborate cham dances featuring wrathful and benevolent deities, all intended to scare away negative influences and accumulate merit for the year ahead. Losar is a time when the entire community, guided by the stars and the moon, collectively resets its spiritual and worldly intentions. The predictive power of this system is another mark of its sophistication. Tibetan astronomers, often monks who dedicated their lives to this study, could accurately forecast lunar and solar eclipses. But in the Tibetan Buddhist worldview, an eclipse is far more than an astronomical event. It is a moment of immense spiritual potency. It is believed that the positive or negative karma generated during an eclipse is multiplied many times over. Therefore, these events are met not with fear, but with intense spiritual practice. Monasteries will hold extended prayer sessions, and individuals will engage in meditation, chanting, and acts of generosity, using this astrologically powerful window to accelerate their path toward enlightenment. The calendar doesn't just predict the eclipse, it provides the spiritual context for how to use it. The rediscovery of the Tibetan calendar's intricacies by the wider world is a story of cultural preservation against tremendous odds. Its principles are enshrined in ancient religious texts and mathematical treatises, many of which were safeguarded within monastery libraries or carried into exile. The survival of this knowledge is a testament to the dedication of Tibetan scholars and monks who have ensured that this unique system, a beautiful fusion of science and spirit, continues to guide and inspire, offering a holistic vision of time where every moment is an opportunity to align one's life with the profound order of the cosmos. In the fertile, river-fed land between the Tigris and Euphrates, where civilization itself is said to have begun, the Sumerians were laying the very foundations of recorded time. Their calendar stands as a monumental first draft in humanity's long quest to chart the heavens, a lunisolar system so effective and intuitively brilliant that it became the bedrock for nearly every major calendar that followed in the ancient Near East. This was not an abstract exercise, it was a practical, spiritual, and administrative necessity born from the unpredictable rhythm of the rivers that gave them life. The annual flooding of the Tigris and Euphrates was the central pulse of their world, bringing the rich silt that fertilized their fields but also posing a terrifying threat of destruction. Predicting this event was a matter of survival, and so they turned their eyes to the sky, seeking patterns in the moon and stars that could foretell the behavior of the waters below. The structure they developed was elegantly simple to start. They observed that the moon cycled through its phases roughly 12 times between each spring equinox, and so they divided the year into 12 lunar months. Each month began not with a calculation, but with a moment of high ceremony and careful observation. The first sighting of the thin, waxing crescent moon low in the western sky just after sunset. A priest, likely stationed atop one of their massive step temple platforms known as ziggurats, would officially declare the new month, setting the entire religious and civic schedule into motion. But the Sumerians were sharp enough to recognize the flaw in this beautiful lunar rhythm. 12 lunar months only add up to about 354 days, leaving them 11¼ days short of the true solar year. Left uncorrected, their months would quickly slide out of sync with the seasons, and their carefully timed planting schedules would soon find themselves hopelessly adrift. Their solution was the intercalary month, a concept of staggering ingenuity that they pioneered. The responsibility for inserting this extra month fell to the priests, who acted as both spiritual leaders and the state's chief scientists. They watched for specific celestial signals, the heliacal rising of key stars, the position of the sun on the horizon at solstices and equinoxes, and when they saw the lunar months drifting too far from the solar cycle, they would simply decree the addition of a 13th month. This was often done on an as-needed basis, a practice that required deep, generational knowledge and constant vigilance. This act of intercalation was perhaps one of the first great leaps in scientific thought, demonstrating a profound understanding that human systems needed to be periodically adjusted to match the immutable laws of the cosmos. Every aspect of this calendar was drenched in divine significance. The Sumerians saw the cosmos as a direct expression of the gods' will, and celestial events were their language. Each month was sacred to a specific deity. For instance, the month of Barazag Ga was dedicated to the sky god Anu, the supreme ruler of the pantheon, while others were linked to powerful figures like Enlil, the god of wind and storms, or Inanna, the goddess of love and war. A solar eclipse was not just an astronomical event, it was a portent of the highest order, often believed to foretell the death of a king. The appearance of Venus as the morning or evening star was interpreted as the movement of Inanna, carrying messages of either coming conflict or prosperity. The priests were not just timekeepers, they were translators of this divine celestial text, using their calendar to determine the most auspicious days for everything from launching a military campaign to laying the foundation stone of a new temple. The incredible detail of our modern understanding comes from their own meticulous records, preserved for millennia on countless clay tablets inscribed with the wedge-shaped marks of cuneiform script. Rediscovered in the ruins of ancient cities like and Uruk, these tablets are more than administrative logs, they are the first scientific journals. They contain lists of omens, records of planetary movements, and painstaking observations of events like the rising of the star Sirius. This vast archive of data allowed Sumerian priest astronomers to begin predicting celestial events, moving from simply recording omens to forecasting them. Their legacy is immeasurable. The Babylonians, who rose to power after the Sumerians, did not create a new system. They adopted and refined the Sumerian calendar, eventually formalizing the 19-year Metonic cycle to regulate intercalation more precisely. The Assyrians followed suit, and through them, this Mesopotamian timekeeping tradition influenced the entire region, leaving an indelible mark on the history of human thought. The Sumerian calendar is a powerful reminder that our need to find order in the cosmos is as ancient as civilization itself, beginning with a people who looked to the stars to understand the flow of their rivers and the will of their gods. Across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, the Maori people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, developed a calendar that is less a measure of time and more a philosophy of life, a dynamic and fluid conversation with the natural world. The Maramataka is a lunar cycle calendar of breathtaking nuance, guiding not just when to act, but how to act in rhythm with the subtle energies of the moon, the tides, the forests, and the seas. Unlike the rigid solar grids of the modern world, the Maramataka is a pulse, a deeply personal and ecological almanac that recognizes that some nights are for vigorous activity, while others are for sacred rest and reflection. It is a system built on the foundational principle of Wakapapa, the interconnected genealogy of all things, linking people directly to the environment and the cosmos. At its core, the Maramataka follows the moon's 30-phase journey, with each night possessing its own name and its own unique characteristics. This is not a simple count of days, it is a detailed forecast of vitality and potential. The phases have names like Wiro, the new moon, a time of high energy and spiritual potency ideal for setting new intentions, but also a time of potential danger where restrictions or tapu might be observed. Artane is a night for planting and sowing, as the moon's waxing light is believed to encourage strong growth. Orongonui, the full moon, is a peak time of abundance and energy, perfect for community gatherings, harvesting, and night fishing, when the moon's bright light illuminates the waters. In stark contrast, the nights of Korkor are associated with the waning moon, a period of low energy better suited for rest, weeding, and finishing tasks rather than starting ambitious new projects. This granular understanding allowed Maori to maximize their efforts, fishing on nights when fish were predicted to be most abundant and nourished by the tide, and planting crops when the lunar influence would best support germination and growth. The true celestial anchor of the Maori year, however, is not a single moon phase. but the pre-dawn rising of the star cluster Matariki, known to many cultures as the Pleiades. Its appearance in the northeastern sky just before dawn in the cold month of Pipiri, around late May or early June, signals the culmination of the harvest and the beginning of the Maori New Year. This event is far more than a calendar date. It is a deeply emotional time of remembrance, celebration, and preparation. Matariki is seen as a mother surrounded by her 6 daughters, and each star is believed to influence a specific aspect of well-being, from the success of future crops to the health of freshwater springs and the abundance of the oceans. The New Year is a time to honor those who have passed away since the last rising of Matariki, to feast on the harvest stores, to fly kites that reach up to touch the stars, and to plan for the season ahead. The brightness and clarity of the Matariki cluster were even used as a forecasting tool. A clear, bright cluster promised a warm and productive growing season, while a hazy or dim one signaled a coming period of challenge and the need for conservation. The survival and rediscovery of the Maramataka is a powerful story of cultural resilience against the tide of colonization. With the arrival of European settlers and the imposition of the Gregorian calendar, this deep lunar knowledge was suppressed and began to fade from common use, preserved only in the sacred oral traditions, songs, and chants held by a determined few elders, the Komatua. Early European records, like the journals of missionaries and explorers, often documented these practices with a colonial lens, misunderstanding their complexity. However, in recent decades, there has been a profound and vibrant revival. Maori scholars and communities have tirelessly worked to reclaim this knowledge, comparing historical accounts with the living memories of elders to reconstruct the full lunar cycle and its meanings. This revival is not a nostalgic look backward. It is an active reclamation of identity and a powerful application of indigenous science to modern challenges like sustainable fishing, organic farming, and holistic well-being, proving that this ancient celestial wisdom holds profound relevance for the future. Nestled in the high valleys of what is now Oaxaca, Mexico, the Zapotic civilization, one of Mesoamerica's earliest and most influential cultures, developed a sophisticated calendar system that wove together the fabric of time, divinity, and daily life. Theirs was a world where a priest astronomer standing atop the Grand Plaza of Monte Albon could read the will of the gods in the movement of the stars and the sun's shifting path, using a dual calendar system that shared a profound kinship with those of their Mayan neighbors, yet was distinctly their own. This wasn't just a method for marking days, it was a sacred machine for interpreting the universe, a tool that positioned the Zapotic people as active participants in a cosmos where every single day pulsed with a unique spiritual energy. The heart of their system beat with 2 complementary cycles. The first was the 260-day ritual calendar, known to scholars as the Pi, a sacred count used for divination and naming ceremonies. This cycle was composed of 20-day signs, each with its own patron deity and symbolic meaning, combined with the numbers 1 through 13. This created 260 unique combinations, a sacred period that may have been based on the length of human gestation, linking the calendar intimately to the very cycle of life itself. A Zapotic diviner would use this count to determine the fate and character of a child born on a particular day, to choose auspicious dates for marriages or battles, and to understand the spiritual currents flowing through any given moment. Alongside this ran the 365-day solar calendar, the Iza, which tracked the seasonal year and was essential for agriculture, governing the planting of maize and the harvesting of crops. The coordination of these 2 cycles, creating a larger 52-year calendar round where both cycles realigned, was a cornerstone of Zapotic cosmology, a grand cycle of death and rebirth that demanded ritual observance to ensure the world's continued existence. The stage for this celestial drama was the magnificent city of Monte Alban, a sprawling complex of pyramids, plazas, and tombs built atop a flattened mountain ridge. It was here, through meticulous archaeological work, that the secrets of the Zapotic calendar were slowly unearthed. Carved stone slabs known as danzantes depict slain captives, often with glyphs between their legs that likely represent calendar dates of their capture or sacrifice. Dozens of engraved slabs feature what archaeologists call glyph D, a symbol representing a flinted knife often associated with the starry sky and likely marking specific celestial events. Most famously, Building J at Monte Alban, with its unique arrowhead shape and a series of slabs carved with upside-down heads and hieroglyphic texts, is believed by many to be an astronomical observatory. The orientation of this building is thought to align with the zenith passage of the sun the day it passes directly overhead, and the rising of the bright star Capella, events that would have been critical for calibrating the solar calendar and scheduling the most important ceremonies. For the Zapotic, time was not a linear march but a never-ending sacred circle. They believed they were living in the fifth creation of the world, and each 52-year calendar round cycle represented a complete era, a bundle of years. The completion of this bundle was a time of tremendous anxiety, as the people feared the world could end and the sun might not rise again. To ensure the sun's rebirth and the continuation of time, they performed the new fire ceremony. At the climax of this ritual, they would extinguish all fires throughout the land. Priests would then watch the night sky for the star we know as Aldebaran to reach its zenith, a sign that the world would continue. If the sign was positive, a new fire was drilled on the chest of a sacrificial victim, and this flame was carried to relight hearths in every home, symbolically rebirthing the world for another 52 years. This profound ritual underscores how the calendar was not an abstract measure but the very heartbeat of existence, a cycle of creation that required human participation to sustain. The legacy of the Zapotic calendar is a testament to the incredible intellectual diversity of ancient Mesoamerica. While they shared the fundamental concept of a 260-day sacred round with the Maya and the Aztecs, their specific day names, their glyphic expressions, and their architectural integrations were entirely unique. Their system was not a borrowed copy but a parallel invention, an independent solution to the universal human need to chart the heavens and find meaning in the passage of time. The rediscovery of their astronomical alignments and carved glyphs at Monte Alban allows us to appreciate the full spectrum of Mesoamerican timekeeping, revealing a continent where multiple civilizations, speaking different languages and worshipping different gods, all looked up at the same sky and arrived at similarly profound and complex understandings of the cosmos. Far to the north, in the vast Arctic landscapes where Scandinavia meets the top of the world, the Sami people developed a calendar that is a masterclass in resilience and intimate environmental connection. This isn't a system carved into stone or written in a book. It is a living, breathing knowledge woven into the very fabric of their existence, a sacred map for navigating a world of extreme light and profound darkness. The Sami calendar is a testament to human ingenuity, a deeply pragmatic and spiritual framework that divides the year not into 12 neat months, but into 8 seasons, each defined by the subtle, critical shifts in the behavior of the sun, the stars, the weather, and most importantly, the reindeer. Imagine a year that begins not on an arbitrary date in January, but with the return of the sun after the weeks-long polar night. This event, known as Ochchi Biavaja Botan, or the Father Sun's Return, is the true New Year, a moment of immense joy and celebration that marks the end of the deep winter's darkness. The Sami did not track this by counting days on a grid. They watched the horizon, the first glimpse of the sun's edge peeking above the southern mountains after its long absence was a moment of communal euphoria, a sign that life could begin again. This solar event kicked off the season of Gija Dalvi, the spring-winter, a time when the light was returning but the deep cold still held the land in its grip. This nuanced understanding that the sun's return did not immediately mean warmth shows a profound attunement to the real, lived experience of their environment, not just an abstract astronomical principle. The true engine of this calendar, and indeed of traditional Sami life, is the reindeer. The entire annual cycle is synchronized with the migration, mating, and birthing patterns of the herd. The seasons are named for the reindeer's condition and the required human activity. Chakchamanu is the autumn month, the time of the Chakchabiga, the autumn wind, which signals the rutting season and the need to gather the herds. Skuavamanu is the crust snow month in spring, when a hard layer forms on the snow, allowing the reindeer to dig for lichen but making it difficult for predators to give chase. This wasn't just a calendar for people, it was a shared timeline with another species, a symbiotic relationship where human survival was utterly dependent on understanding and respecting the animal's innate rhythms. Beyond the sun and the reindeer, the Sami were also expert stellar navigators. The long winter nights provided a crystal-clear canvas of stars, which they used not for marking long-term dates, but for immediate, practical orientation during the dark months of hunting and herding. The North Star, Bojar, was the fixed point around which their world turned. They also tracked the movement of the Big Dipper, known as Favnagovat, or the year marker, observing how its position in the sky changed throughout the year to gauge the passing of time during the endless night. This celestial knowledge was passed down through generations in the form of joiks, traditional, often personal, songs that encoded information about navigation, family lineages, and the characteristics of the land. A joik for a particular place might contain subtle references to the stars visible from that location, making the oral tradition itself a form of living, sung calendar and map. The rediscovery of this sophisticated system by the wider world is a poignant story of cultural reclamation. For centuries, under pressure from the governments of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia, traditional Sami practices and language were suppressed. Their ancestral knowledge was dismissed as primitive folklore. It has been through the determined work of Sami scholars and elders, meticulously piecing together oral histories, studying old almanacs, and listening to the wisdom held in the joiks, that the full complexity of their calendar has been brought to light. This revival is not merely an academic exercise, it is a powerful act of decolonization, a reaffirmation of Sami identity, and a vital declaration that their ancient, ecologically attuned way of measuring time holds profound wisdom for a modern world struggling to reconnect with the natural rhythms of the planet. The Sami calendar stands as a brilliant Arctic adaptation, proving that human timekeeping can be as fluid, resilient, and deeply connected to life as the environment it springs from. What becomes truly astonishing as we step back from these 22 individual stories is not the differences that separate them, but the powerful, unifying themes that echo across continents and millennia. From the deserts of Mali to the highlands of Peru, from the icy Arctic to the tropical Pacific, these calendars reveal a shared human project, a universal drive to find our place within the grand cosmic order. They are a testament to a time when the sky was not a distant void, but a living, breathing presence, intimately woven into the fabric of daily existence. This was a world, where the practical and the profound were inseparable, where knowing when to plant a seed was as much a spiritual act as it was an agricultural one, guided by the same celestial bodies that govern the gods themselves. The most profound common thread is this seamless integration of cosmology into the mundane. For us today, checking a calendar is a utilitarian act divorced from any greater meaning. But for the Maya priest calculating the cycle of Venus, the Egyptian farmer watching for the rise of Sirius, or the Sami herder noting the position of the Big Dipper, reading the sky was an act of participation in a cosmic drama. Their timekeeping was not a separate branch of science, it was the very framework for life. The Babylonian priest interpreting an eclipse omen was in the same moment an astronomer, a theologian, and a political advisor. The Incan emperor performing a solstice ceremony at the Intihuitana was simultaneously a head of state, a high priest, and an engineer ensuring the sun's return for his people. This holistic view created a society where every individual action, from a farmer's planting to a king's coronation, was harmonized with the perceived rhythm of the universe, creating a powerful sense of order and meaning. This leads to a second, crucial theme: the role of celestial events as the ultimate arbiter of time for both field and faith. Agriculture was the bedrock of these civilizations, and their survival depended on predicting the seasons with remarkable accuracy. The annual flooding of the Nile, the arrival of the monsoon rains in India, the retreat of winter ice in Scandinavia, these were events of life and death. By tying these earthly cycles to unwavering celestial markers, the solstice sun, the heliacal rising of a star, the specific phase of the moon, they created a reliable, repeatable almanac. But this practicality was always sanctified by religion. The cosmic event that signaled planting was also the feast day of a fertility goddess. The solstice that marked the sun's weakening was a time for desperate rituals to strengthen it. The calendar was the mechanism that ensured the gods were honored at the precisely correct moment, maintaining the fragile covenant between humanity and the divine, and ensuring the continued functioning of the world itself. Underpinning all of this is a unifying philosophical belief in a deeply interconnected universe. These cultures did not see a separation between the heavens and the earth, the spiritual and the physical. They operated on a principle of cosmic sympathy, where events in the sky were directly linked to events on the ground. A meteor shower wasn't just a pretty light show, it was a portent of a king's death. The retrograde motion of Mars wasn't an optical illusion, it was the god of war turning his gaze toward a new battlefield. This world, you made the calendar the most important tool a civilization could possess. It was the key to deciphering the messages of the gods, a guide for navigating a world where every moment was charged with spiritual significance and potential. This belief in interconnection is perhaps the most significant difference between their time and ours, and it is what makes their astronomical achievements so breathtaking. They were mapping a living, conscious universe. What makes this global phenomenon even more stunning is the evidence of independent invention. The structural similarities between the Mayan and Zapotic 260-day sacred rounds, or the solar calendars of Egypt and Persia, are not necessarily the result of cultural diffusion. They are brilliant, separate solutions to the same universal problems, arrived at by cultures with no possible contact with one another. This suggests that the drive to measure and mythologize time is a fundamental part of the human psyche, an intrinsic response to the awe we feel when we look up at the night sky. Each culture used the tools and materials at its disposal: stone pillars, wooden staves, cuneiform tablets, oral poetry to build their own unique model of the cosmos, proving that the scientific and imaginative spirit is a universal human trait. The modern rediscovery of these systems, therefore, is far more than an academic exercise. It is a process of reclaiming lost chapters of human ingenuity, profoundly expanding our understanding of history and the capabilities of ancient minds. It challenges the once prevalent notion of linear progress, showing us that sophisticated science flourished outside the traditional Western canon. This knowledge is now inspiring a cultural revival among indigenous communities, from the celebration of Matariki in New Zealand to the renewed practice of the Makahiki in Hawaii, as people reconnect with the celestial wisdom of their ancestors. For modern astronomers and ecologists, these calendars offer a different kind of wisdom, a model of sustainability and a reminder that we are part of a larger system, not separate controllers of it. They stand as eternal monuments to humanity's enduring fascination with the cosmos, a fascination that continues to drive us to explore the deepest mysteries of the universe, just as it did for a priest watching the horizon from a ziggurat thousands of years ago. We have traveled across oceans and continents, from the towering pyramids of the Maya to the silent fjords of the Sami, and what this incredible journey reveals is something far greater than just a collection of historical curiosities. It uncovers a fundamental truth about who we are. Each of these 22 calendars, in its own unique language of stone, star, and story, tells us that humanity has always been and will always be a species of sky watchers. This is not a story of primitive superstition, but one of profound intelligence and a deep, enduring need to find our rhythm within the grand, turning melody of the cosmos. Our ancestors did not see a cold, empty void when they looked up. They saw a living, breathing, conscious universe, and they built these intricate systems to converse with it, to plead with it, to thank it, and to ensure their place within its magnificent order. The real gift of this rediscovery is the way it shatters the modern illusion of separation. We often live today as if we are apart from nature, our lives governed by digital screens and artificial schedules that have no connection to the rising sun or the phases of the moon. These ancient calendars stand as a powerful corrective to that disconnect. They remind us that we are not observers of the natural world, we are participants in it. The Hawaiian Makahiki season of peace and games, timed to the Pleiades, shows us that community and celebration are essential ecological acts. The Zapotic New Fire ceremony, tied to a 52-year cosmic cycle, teaches us that renewal is a conscious ritual that requires our active engagement. These systems offer us a different way of being in the world, one based on reciprocity, where we give back to the universe as much as we take from it, where our actions are measured not just in productivity, but in their harmony with the greater whole. Perhaps the most humbling lesson is the sheer diversity of genius on display. There is no single right way to track time. The Vedic seers of India found their answers in the 27 lunar mansions, while the priests of Babylon found theirs in the meticulous recording of planetary omens on clay. The Inuit of the Arctic tuned their year to the migration of the caribou and the seal, while the Dogon of Mali aligned their most sacred ceremony with the orbit of a star invisible to the naked eye. This beautiful plurality proves that curiosity is our universal inheritance. It did not dawn in one place and then spread. It ignited independently, like countless stars flickering to life across the global night sky, each culture crafting its own brilliant and valid understanding of the universe from the materials it had at hand. So what do we do with this recovered wisdom? The answer is not to abandon our modern calendars and technologies, but to enrich our lives by reincorporating this ancestral perspective. We can learn to look up more often. We can note the full moon and understand the ancient power it held over human imagination. We can mark the solstices and equinoxes not just as astronomical events, but as moments to reflect on the balance of light and dark in our own lives. We can support the cultural revivals already underway, where indigenous communities are reclaiming and rejuvenating these ancient systems, teaching the world about sustainability, community, and spiritual connection through the lens of their celestial knowledge. Their fight to preserve this wisdom is a fight for a more holistic future for everyone. As our own probes sail past distant planets and our telescopes peer back to the dawn of time, we are continuing the very same quest that began with a priest watching the horizon from a stone pyramid or a navigator chanting a star song into the wind. We are still that same species yearning to understand the great mystery. The 22 calendars we have explored are more than relics. They are maps left for us by our greatest explorers, showing us that the ultimate destination was never just a date on a page, but a state of wonder. They remind us that the greatest journey is not outward into space, but inward into meaning, and that the most important discovery we can make is that we have always been, and will always be, children of the stars. Thank you for joining us on this exploration. If this journey through time and sky resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments and consider subscribing to join us for our next adventure into the mysteries of the